Welcome to the Soul Space. I'm Sarah.
And I'm Kim.
And these true life stories are brought to you to inspire growth, healing, and positive changes.
Enjoy. So, welcome, Sue, to the Soul Space. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So today, I'll explain a little bit about how the Soul Space works. So, what we normally do is invite everyone on, and it's your soul story, really. So, we look for you to share. It's up to you how much details. I try and get as much out of you as I can. But it's just you sharing really how you got into what it is you do now. Any struggles or challenges you faced in life, what helped you? Because then we hope if people hear, they might hear something they need to hear or they can relate to. And just how you use what it is you do now. I'll let you explain it to help others. So it's just a general flow, really. But it's up to you how far you want to go back. So wherever you want to start, really.
Oh, right, okay. So, I suppose being different is a theme. Sort of always feeling different. So, school, I've always been a chatty, talkative girl. And I suppose nowadays I would have been diagnosed ADD back in the day, if I was at school now. That diagnosis came later when I was working as a nurse manager in a forensic unit, and I was doing another qualification in management because I hadn't worked in that field before, in managing a nursing home, a forensic unit. So I was doing a qualification at college, and they offered to, if anybody has any problems, learning difficulties. So I thought, So I was diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD. And my dyslexia seemed like it was, if we can be worse or better, because I've got all my children have got some form of dyslexia, dyspraxia, dyscalculia, ADHD. So it's in our family. So back at school, I felt different, always chatty. But I didn't realise what the different feeling was. And I think when people have asked me as a healer, psychic, medium, when I've been working, people ask, when did it start? When did you know you could talk to dead people? When, all that sort of stuff. And I relate, it always sort of takes me back to when I was about 3 or 4. And I was living in the northeast of England then. I'm Geordie, really.
Yeah.
In Tag Geordie, if you like. And I was on the bus with my grandma, and I got off the seat to go and sit with this old man, and he felt like Father Christmas, that's all I can say. And I was all like on his lap, and then I looked at the other man across the way and thought, you're not nice. He wouldn't be nice to me. So that was a very young awareness of being intuitive, psychic, I suppose, reading people.
Yeah.
But I wasn't aware that that's what I was doing. I thought everybody, you're little. You just think everybody's the same, don't you?
Yeah.
And I think the other memory around about that time was I used to play and pretend to be Richard the Lionheart. Around about the same age, actually. I think I was 3, Mum said. All the grown-ups were in the kitchen, me and my sister in the living room at Grandma's, and I could feel the sword in my hand. It was heavy. I could feel the chainmail on my body. I could see the tabard, white tabard with a red cross, and I was fighting, saying, I'm Richard the Lionheart. Now, people could say, I suppose, nobody took any notice of me.
Yeah.
Because the grown-ups didn't even know. My sister was like, nobody took any notice.
Yeah.
It's just a memory I have when people ask about my my ability to see other lives in people.
Yeah.
So I was 3, so I went to school at 4 in the northeast of England. It was 1966, so I don't think I'd have been reading books. I don't think I'd have been watching TV about Richard the Lionheart and all that stuff.
It's a very random thing.
So
It's free.
To me, I think that was a past life.
Yeah.
I've had, since I've become an adult, it's like the whole of I sort of can map and plot a lot of my past lives, and they've intermingled with current lives, like I've met people, we meet people who are in our soul group, in our soul family.
Yeah.
So we incarnate in groups, and then that happens so that we can heal and process and work on the goals and aims. So that was sort of like where I started. And then was moved at age 8. The family moved to the Midlands, and I was teased for my accent, so an outsider again.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was lucky enough to be friends with a very nice group of girls at school. So, the top dog girls.
Yeah.
And I think really that best friend I had there, I'm still friends with her, kept me on the straight and narrow to a degree. Yeah, just, always felt different, always felt relationships were difficult. And I think I had a propensity for languages. I loved to hear a foreign language and speak a foreign language. My parents were told when I went to high school at age 11 that I could have taken my GCSE French then.
Yeah.
From junior school. So we did a couple of years before we went to the high school.
Yeah.
So I was really, orally, I can pick a language up very quickly with the ear. But of course, so I thought, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'm going to teach French. Unbeknown to me, like the dyslexia and all of that, so I was doing like 4A levels and a GCSE in German. And then I think it all got too much, the reading and everything. And 3 months before my finals, I just decided I was going to leave.
Okay.
Did a little bit of work because I was working in a little tea room. And then I thought, well, what am I going to do? So I left. And my dad kept coming upstairs to my bedroom saying, what are you going to do now? And I was like 17, going on 18. And I thought, I don't know what to say to him. What should I do now? Because I can't do my teaching because I hadn't done my A-levels. And then a friend of mine, his dad, I thought, I'll be a nurse. I'll just tell him that. I'll get him off my back.
Yeah.
So I applied to London because all my friends were in London doing at university. I thought, I'll go to London. Got a place at St Thomas's, but it was 18 months wait. My friend's dad said, why don't you come and do your learning disability nursing? He was the divisional nursing officer at the local hospital for people with learning disabilities. And back in those days, they were called, the people who were living in the hospital were given the label of mentally subnormal. Okay. So that was 1981.
I was going to say, I've never heard that. Mentally
subnormal. Then it changed to mental handicap. And then we changed to learning disability, which is what we've got now.
Yeah.
So over the period of time. So I started a week before my 18th birthday, not knowing what the devil I was doing in this hospital. The only person I knew with a learning disability was Joanne down the road who had Down syndrome, my mum's friend's daughter.
Yeah.
And I thought, what am I doing here? I really thought, what am I doing here? And the way I ended up there, it was like, my friend's dad said, why don't you come and join and do your training? And he said, come on, we'll go, it was Thursday afternoon, come and we'll go and ring Uncle Ron in the School of Nursing at this hospital. So he rang on the Thursday afternoon. He said, yes, bring her along. She can have an interview tomorrow on Friday. And unbeknownst to me, the cohort was starting on the Monday. So I literally went for the interview on the Thursday, on the Friday, had the interview on Friday, and then started my nurse training on the Monday. And I just stuck at it. It was really hard work. And I was working on the first ward, which was adult men, some of them physically disabled. I remember the first day, a guy called George in a wheelchair, and he was about 16 stone, paralysed from the chest down. And I was having to clean him up. He used a few choice words about what had gone on. And I couldn't find anything struggled to find soap even.
Yeah.
And there were huge, like, adult nappies. So the water was cold. They used to call it the bowl room, because back in the day they used to just have a bowl.
Yeah.
And that's how I had to clean this guy up. It took me a long time to get him on the floor. No hoists, no lift.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Old school.
Yeah. But I just really had a very strong work ethic and just stuck and worked and worked and worked. And I remember thinking or saying, oh, he needs this, or he's got something wrong with his foot, or he's feeling this. And they'd say, how do you know that? I said, I don't know, just feel it. And I think the plan was from Spirit was to put me in that position to grow and develop my sixth sense.
Yeah.
I think that's what I think they had a plan all along.
Yeah.
So that's what happened. So did that nurse training, and then very quickly, as soon as I qualified, there was community nurse post became available in Sutton Coldfield in North Birmingham, and it was a real opportunity. And the nursing officer said, look, this guy's looking for nurses in this area. He's come and told me this job's going. So I went for the job. I wasn't offered the job. One of the other nurses, who was a little bit older than me, was offered it, but she didn't want to move. So they offered it me because she didn't want to move.
Yeah.
And I was young, free and single. So, and I ended up in community nursing. I started that in 86. And that was a sort of beginning of a very long 37-year career in learning disabilities. And then later I trained in mental health nursing as well. So throughout the career, I've worked with families, children's and families, with children with learning disabilities. I trained in Portage, which was like a home schooling teaching thing. Alongside the community nursing, I did another qualification in applied psychotherapies and challenging behaviours, trained in NLP, in psychotherapies, like counselling-based therapeutic approaches, because community nursing, that's what we did. So eventually I worked, the last 10 years, I was managing a forensic unit, and then something happened where Spirit, all along through my career, I'd worked for Spirit in the sense that I was a reader. So I used to read people using cards generally, because people feel very uncomfortable when you tell them things without having anything that you seem to be getting the information from. It makes people very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
So I used to use tarot. And there was a family of mine on Castle Vale, actually, and I used to visit them, two little girls, twins, one with spina bifida, and I used to go and do play therapy and stuff, and the mum, we got chatting about spiritual things, I think, one time, and she said that she'd never known her family. She'd been found under a wardrobe in the World War II by some guys coming back from the night shift. And she never knew her family. And I just had this very strong vision of a pub sign of a big bull. And what else was I shown? It was linking me to Hereford. I just thought, oh, your family's in Hereford. And I can't remember how or what happened, but I gave her details, and she was, from what I gave her, she managed to find a sister. Oh. So they were like the first people, other than my mates in the nurses' home when we used to do Ouija boards and all that sort of which I wouldn't recommend now, obviously. Opening up portals and not knowing what's coming in and not knowing what to do with it.
Not knowing how to close them.
we were blessed. We had a little guide, actually. There's a story about that. We used to put a T-shirt around the light in my room in the nurse's home to make it more atmospheric. And me and my girl's dad, that my husband, he wasn't my husband then, we were just friends, and some other people were doing this Ouija board, and it was flying around. The glass was moving quite quickly, and everything was going okay. And then it just stopped dead. And we were like, what's going on? And I was like, something's going on, something's not right. And then I could see smoke coming off this T-shirt that was wrapped around the light. So it was just about to burst into flames.
Oh, because of the T-shirt on the bulb.
On the light bulb, yeah. So took it down, altered the lighting, cracked back on, and it was that's better. It's spelled that's better. And we asked who it was, and her name was Rose, and she said she was going to be a guide for me and my then friend who became my husband and father of my children. Yeah, so that's a funny little story. But so there was a lot of development happened, and then all the way through my career, people used to tease me and call me Mystic Meg of NBC, which was the North Birmingham Community NHS Trust. So I had a lot of that ribbing, and I mean, all my life really just been ribbed and cajoled and, you know, teased about being the way I am. Never really bothered me.
Yeah.
Water off a duck's back.
Yeah.
I say that, but it does, you do feel that. It's the witch wound that a lot of us carry. And it's, you know, it is there and it does hurt, but you just get used to it. So all the way through, I've always trained. So I trained as a spiritual healer first and foremost. That coincided with the ending of a relationship. So the guy I was living with said, I don't think I can live with you if you're going to do that. He said he was joking, but
He wasn't.
why would you say it?
Yeah.
So 2 years later that ended. I dowsed a map and found a lovely little cottage the cottage was actually, had been in the hands of healers for 200 years. And I
Really?
just dowsed a map, had a list of places that I needed to go and look at to find.
And how old are you at this point?
I got my son, so I was about 27. So he was 3 when I started, so late 80s, early 90s.
Yeah.
Started to do, and it was like when I did my NFSH healing, National Federation of Spiritual Healers, I wasn't interested in Reiki. It was spiritual healing that came from the divine.
Yeah.
Not that I'm not a Bible basher or a God person, but being brought up a Christian and have that interesting background of a father who's atheist, agnostic, and a mother who's a Christian.
Yeah.
Nobody went to church, but we were
Yeah.
brought up that way. Went to Sunday schools and stuff like that. So it was very interesting. So I did the spiritual healing, and it was like I needed to do more. So I did all 4 parts in a year, and it was like unheard of. They said people generally, span it out over.
Yeah.
But no, I had to do it. It was just all that, eating it all up. And then I think sometime later I started to look into mediumship training because I could talk to people who were in spirit. So I went to Arthur Findlay College at Stansted, did a few courses there in mediumship. Found a little church local to me, and they started to put me on platforms, so I do platform demonstration mediumship.
What do you find the training helped you with? Because obviously it's a natural gift that you always had. And obviously up until 27, you've pretty much just had to find your own way with it. So when it's training, what is it they actually do that you think sort of what helped you?
I think because I was a nurse, and especially being a learning disability nurse, and we were always looked down upon by the general nurses when we did our general placement, by the way, because we were like, those, But what people don't realise is that we had to learn what how the body works, how the chromosome, how everything works, and how it can go wrong so that people, how people get affected by whatever it is, chromosomal or otherwise. So, I felt that because I knew how things worked and I'd learned how things worked with the body and the mind and this, I wanted to know how I was doing it. How is this happening?
Yeah.
How am I doing this? How is it working? Just so it wouldn't have altered how I felt about it, really.
Yeah.
It was just that I needed to know. And what it gave me systems.
Yeah.
And systems and processes are the way we live our lives, isn't it?
Yeah.
We live by, routines. And we know,
Structure.
in spiritual world, we have practices, we have a yoga practice, we have a meditation practice. And that was what I was learning. I was learning a practice, how to, funny enough, when I was at Arthur Findlay College, I asked one of the tutors, how do we protect our energy? How do we protect ourselves? And they just looked at me and said, if you work in the light, you don't need protection. If you work with God, you don't need protection. Well, I'd had a few experiences and I didn't necessarily agree with that.
I don't know where they were brought up.
No.
But maybe not round where we were brought up.
No, didn't agree with that because, you know, I'd had experiences where, again, youngsters doing Ouija boards, and I went to the loo one night and I came back and they were all white, you know, white. I said, what's gone on? They said, we've had the 360s. I said, if we had that energy in the house, there'd be no roof, there'd be no doors. So I said, come on, let's get back on the... And I just talk to spirit like I talk to anybody else. If somebody's playing silly buggers, frightening people, I'll go, who are you?
Yeah.
Who are you to do that to these? What's going... And it turned out, through the questioning, it was an uncle of hers that was aggrieved about family and how they treated him. So we got to the bottom of it, and I just asked him to leave like you would do one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, I've learned in the 37 years...
This is why you need protecting, Sue, because you tell people to do what?
Of being a lunatic, of, you know, being in those fields. And I've always, even as a mental health nurse, when I was training, I never really liked... I love the older ladies in mental health. I did love them. But I much prefer being on the men's ward, where they were chucking chairs and tables and effing and blinding and, you know...
Yeah.
I just felt more... more at home and able to deal with that.
Yeah.
Whereas some people, they used to find that very frightening and hide behind me.
Yeah.
So a lot of the time, social workers, you know, we'd go out on the district and community and they'd hide behind me while I was knocking the door, you know.
You'd be there at the front.
Yeah. So what happened was, it was getting to a point where I trained in mediumship, I trained in spiritual healing, and then I trained in hypnotherapy, because past life was part of my life.
Yeah.
And I could see other people's past lives. So somewhere along the line, I got a job at Psychic Sisters in London, in Selfridges, with Jane Wallace and the team. And people would come and they were talking about their, you know, I'd be doing a reading. I said, you've got this relationship. It's all about relationships, isn't it? A lot of it when people are readings, which is why I stopped working there. And I said, well, this guy, you've been with this man in a past life. That's why you feel the love that you do now. But, you know, so I could always see it and see how past lives...
linked in.
And as it's grown and developed, I always say that it's like I see the soul like a crystal. And it's almost like spirit... The soul shifts it, or it's not the person's soul. I think it's the guides and the helpers. For when we set it up, like we're going to work together. Yeah, they were said, right, we're working together. There's a contract. It's already made. We don't have to write it. It's already made. Our souls have decided, and your guides, my guides get together, and I get. It's like a shift. So I get shown this crystal, and through that facet that they're showing me, I almost go in. Like I'm going into a portal and I can see the past life. It's like I'm watching a film. Yeah. Or I'm physically there watching it. Most of the time I'm not. I stand back and I watch it, and I can feel and sense all of it. And that's a lot of what happens is that I get shown that. I get shown ancestral stuff. So like people would... Like the you know, when I'm working at the festivals and stuff and doing one-to-one shamanic treatments, I will have a feeling. If people, I ask people, what is it you'd like to work on? And they might talk about something. And I said, oh, I was just picking up something about your father's line, your ancestral line with your dad. Is that, you know, does that have any relevance? Does that have any bearing? And they would like look and say, oh, that's interesting you say that because blah, blah, blah. I was doing readings over in Berlin once, and this guy came, and I was talking about his lineage and doing some healing back, and they'll come. So whoever is needed, I see them stepping forward. And I'm not that pedantic about, oh, this is 5th generation. I'll just go, it's like great-granddad or 5 back or whatever. And they'll tell me what it is that's been passed down and where it's come from and how to heal, you know, and then how to heal it. So the guy I was working with, I was talking about lineages, and he asked if I was a family constellation worker, and I said no, I'm not trained in family constellation work. However, I did train in family therapy when I was a mental health nurse. So is it that far from the...
Yeah,
I don't
it's in again.
Because he said, I'm a family constellation worker and that's what you're doing with me. And I went, oh, okay, that's fine. So I do, I do like relax things and just go with the flow. But yeah, I had a lot of, just had the drive to do a lot of training, wanted to have the training under my belt before I went off and did whatever. And then I trained in shamanic practice down in Cornwall.
I was going to say, when did that come in?
Cornwall, down in Cornwall. I think it was probably, gosh, I can't remember if it was 2015 or... Yeah, it was towards round about that time.
Did you just feel a pull to go towards?
Oh, I was looking for 2 years for somebody to train with.
Okay.
2 years. And I'd had people around me, so I was working and continuing with my spiritual work and spirit work. Literally, I had a very strong pressure from spirit. It's almost like, when you get pushed in a crowd, constantly, you feel that pushing. And and I wasn't wanting to push back, but what they were pushing me for was to do more work for them.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm a nurse, I'm a single mum, brought 3 kids up pretty much myself, and I have to pay the bills.
Yeah.
And if I leave my job now, I'll lose half my pension. So I had to sort of hang in.
Yeah.
And so I was negotiating with spirit. I'd love to do more work for you, but if I leave now, I'm going to lose half my pension.
Yeah.
Within a year or so, I had cancer, and it was like, wow, So not wow the cancer, but wow the lengths that spirit will go to get their own way.
This is what, I had this conversation and some people look at me and you know what, sometimes when I'm saying this, I think I'm really, as someone that does this as a business, I'm probably losing myself a lot of clients because I explain to people, I said, sometimes when you start on this journey, what you've got to remember is there isn't no going back as such. And I've seen people that they've started to do this work and all of a sudden they'll say, Kim, something really strange is happening at my work and I'm suddenly not getting on with everyone at work, or I've had a friend that lost a job, another friend, and I was like, because someone's not in their purpose. And they're like, I keep getting all these nudges and this starts happening, and obviously in relationships that are not serving, the spirit will start nudging you. So I said, that's where it's always the trust and surrender comes in, which was always my biggest battle. Trust and surrender. Yeah. And I'm like trying to hold on to this.
It wasn't like
living in two worlds sometimes.
I was full in trust and wanted to surrender, but I had to be... I could retire at 55 because I had mental health officer status. So I could go at 55, and this was 13 years ago. What was that? 2012, isn't it? 2012. Back in 2012. And I think it was at the time when I was managing the forensic unit, which was tough going, that job. And so I had cancer and I had a year off. And because I could, health insurance and whatever. So everything panned out that I figured if I went back part-time until I was 55, I could at least do half and half. Yeah. Which is what happened. And being part-time, I couldn't work in the forensic unit anymore. They needed more hours. So then that's how I ended up in the forensic team, which is a really, really amazing team. In Birmingham, and people used to come from all over the country to see how that team functioned. It was brilliant. But I was only part-time. Yeah. So Spirit had half and half.
Yeah. Was that the deal you cut in the end?
that was the deal we cut, yeah.
You were brave, because after that I'd probably go, okay, I'll do what you say.
No, I wasn't going to lose my pension. Yeah. It was as a single mum, I'd worked all those years and I thought, no, I need that stability for whatever.
Yeah, and it's being realistic. I think we get caught up sometimes. In reality, we are here having a human experience, and there's earthly things you have to do and you need. Did you, when you were going through your cancer, did you have traditional treatment and use these practices, or just out of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
interest, what was
Yeah,
you
I
doing?
first and foremost, well, it was a very rare cancer, very rare, 1 in a million, in a very vulnerable place. Really, I had cancer in the Bartholin gland, which is in the vulva.
Okay.
So you can get Bartholin cyst. Some people may recognise that word or terminology, but this was a tumour, 4 centimetre tumour. So the only thing that I found was that there was an Italian doctor who was feeding bicarbonate of soda into the major arteries that supplied a tumour in this guy, and he healed him that way. And I would have tried that because I had the understanding that the tumour was like Candida sugar based, fed by.
That's why we were just...
I do like my cake.
Yeah.
So went through the normal allopathic route, and I had 3 lots of surgery. Thankfully, I didn't have to have any chemo or anything. So, but alongside of that, I was using lots of alternative, shamanic practice, past lives. So I think there were 3 past lives I healed, which connected to it, and lots of shamanic healing, just lots and lots and lots of alternative stuff.
Yeah.
Found a herbal drink called Essiac,
Okay.
which was supposed to be, had been given to a nurse called Cassia, and by the Native American First Nation people, and it was a good drink. So I used that. Used lots of things.
Yeah.
But no, I didn't have the guts or balls to go cold turkey. I wondered how I would have handled it if I was supposed to have had chemo, but I didn't, thankfully.
Yeah. Yeah.
But my guides told me all along what was happening.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, so I was told you're going to have a really, really, really hard year. It's going to be not very nice. But then when the year's over, you'll be okay. It'll all be good. And I remember my mum saying, I wish I had it, and I'm an older person, and blah, blah, blah. I said, no, Mum, it's okay. I'm going to have a horrible year, but it's going to be okay. So that's that phrase, this too will pass.
Yeah, yeah.
Was a phrase I would tell myself a lot. And I knew, I knew the plan.
Yeah.
I knew the plan. I had to learn to walk again because I lost perineum. I lost, an awful lot of. It was quite a thing. Couldn't sit, couldn't. Yeah, so it was a long, heavy road to recovery, because I had day surgery, which was hysterical, actually. Now I look back, because you go to the doctors, don't you?
Yeah.
With this lump, and I'd had it a while, and I knew what it was as soon as I found it. And I thought, better go to the doctors, really. So I went to the doctors and I said, I've got this lump, and I think I knew they were going to try and say it was a Bartholin cyst, but there was no pain, and I knew it was cancer anyway.
Yeah.
But you can't go into the doctors and say, oh, by the way, I've got cancer. My guides have told me if you just do the surgery now, we'll be okay in a year. No, that wasn't going to happen. So I was sat in front of this GP, and my guides are saying, ask how old she is, ask how long she's been a doctor, because I knew what they were saying. She was very young and she had no experience. And I'm just like trying to be civil and like telling them to be quiet. So she prescribed the penicillin. They were like going, that's not going to work. I went, yes, I know. We've got to go through the process, And then I went back sometime later and to ask for the surgery. I said, I need this cyst removing, playing along for some strange reason. And I had a lot of stress at the time at work, a lot of stress, really, really stressful job. That was when I was managing the unit. And it was I could get a quick appointment if I had a student doctor.
Yeah.
And Spirit went, yeah, have him. I'm going, oh, yes, that's fine, thank you, I'll take him. That's appointment, lovely. So I saw him on my own. So he was doing his tick box thing. They have to, you get a far better appointment with these student doctors because they go through everything.
They're thorough, yeah.
And he basically, I ended up in tears through stress because he was talking about work. And he said, I think you need some time off. I said, I've got a sickness reviews to do. I can't do it. Anyway, he said, have you got a hobby? And I said, well, it's not a hobby. It's sort of a way of life.
Yeah.
But my mediumship, my spiritual life. And he said, what's that? How does that work? I said, do you know your granddad George who just passed? I said, he's saying that Peter, your cousin Peter, has got blah, 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 blah. I said, that's mediumship. That's what it is. And he was like, how did you know my granddad George had passed? I said, 3 months ago. 3 months ago, he's telling me. It was June, whatever. I gave him the date and when he passed. And he said, and I only have one male cousin and his name is Peter. I went, yeah. He said, how did you know? I said, well, your granddad's just told me. So basically, he called in the other doctor not to tell on me.
Yeah.
Because he needed, we needed to arrange the surgery. So the other doctor came in, who was like my family GP, and he was very nice. He said, "Do you want to go off? Do you want some time off?" Because the student doctor was saying, "I think she needs some time off."
Yeah.
And I got home and I couldn't stop crying. It was like the floodgates had opened, and I think the fear, because I knew I had cancer, but it wasn't being acknowledged. So I rang the doctor and said, I can't stop crying. He said, I'll write you a sick note. He said, we'll just put gynecological stuff on it.
Yeah.
We won't put stress. He said, because I know what the NHS is like, unquote. Unquote. Which is, yes, back in the day. I had to pretend that I wasn't stressed because it wouldn't go down really well. And that was the beginning of that sort of process, the cancer journey. And then they said, all right, we're going to do day surgery, which was hysterical again. So they're filling in the forms. I said, I've got an allergy to some anaesthetics. And there was that whole discussion about which anaesthetic I could have, which one I couldn't have. And then the form filling, sign this. And the doctor said to me, none of this is going to happen on this form that you're signing for. None of it will happen. My guy's going, everything on that form's going to happen to you. You're gonna need blood. You're gonna do this. This is gonna. They were like, and I was going, nodding to the doctor, going, yes, there you are, sign away. Why was I signing away when my guides were telling me all of this was going to happen to me? But I just felt in safe hands.
Yeah.
It was really, it was really comical, really, when you think about it. And the whole process, nothing went according to plan, obviously, because they opened me up and saw that it was cancer. So then when I was recovering, I felt the surgeon's fear in my wound. Really? And I saw it manifest in shape, colour and form, and I had to do some work to get his fear out. And then when I looked into that, we'd had karma together, me and the surgeon, in a past life. So that was another element, curiously. But while they had to get me into recovery, and I wasn't doing well because I was borderline for blood transfusion, but didn't really want one because it was that time, when people didn't really want other people's blood.
Yeah.
And I was like coming round, and I looked, and there was this little old lady in spirit with these massive glasses, little perm, tiny little thing she was. You know how the trolleys have got. She was just about. And then there was this nurse looking after me in recovery, and she was going, oh, and I went, oh, so I couldn't hardly talk, grandma's here. She's got big glasses. Her name's Marjorie or whatever. Well, she started crying, not horribly, like she was happy crying. And then I'd pass out, and then I'd wake up again, and then I was looking around me because I was there, but I wasn't there. I was in another dimension, really, truly in this amazing dimension. And the doors kept opening to the theatre, and I could see these gold people around the surgeons helping with what they were doing. And then so I was looking around me, and everybody had at least one gold person. I was like, oh. I kept passing out, coming out. They had to put the foil on me and do all sorts of weird stuff to me. So I was like very interested in all these gold people, and at no time did I feel like I was going to pass. I didn't see, there was no discussion about me going anywhere other than.
Yeah.
But I think because my blood pressure, the anaesthetic, whatever, me being me.
That's more, I think, to do with it.
So I went upstairs to the ward, and they couldn't, it was the anaesthetic really that was affecting my blood pressure. So every time they lifted my head, I was passing out. everybody was poorly. The anaesthetic was bad. It was a bad mix. The anaesthetist, I don't think, had done a good job that day. And I lay there thinking, and I counted in my head how many gold people I'd seen. And it was just day surgery, so it was a big theatre.
Yeah.
28 gold people I saw. 28. It was a really amazing experience.
And they were all attached
Working.
to
Yeah,
one person,
they were guides, but I think they were medical guides. I think they were specifically to do with work and
because
and
they've all,
job.
with them all looking the same. They're all old people.
And they were angelic. They didn't have wings. They were gold people. And it was very interesting because back when my son was about 6 or 7, I was in the bath and he would come and play with his car because, you know, when you work and you don't see them much, do you? And he was like with his car around the bottom of the sink. And I said, who have you been playing with today? What sort of day have you had? And he's like, been playing with Percy and Albert. And I thought, I know he goes to a Harborne left-wing school, but Percy and Albert, don't think I know those names.
Yeah.
And I said, what do Percy and Albert look like? And he was like, people-shaped but gold. So it was really interesting. And we had a little chat about spirit guides. And I remember saying to him that not everybody sees them and not everybody believes that we can see them. I said, so sometimes we have to be a little bit careful about who we talk to, but we can talk about it, Mummy, and you can talk about it.
Yeah.
But then when I saw these people-shaped but gold,
Yeah.
I thought, oh, gosh, that's what my son used to say, Tom used to say when he was a little boy.
And have any of your kids?
All of them.
All of them?
Much. Yeah.
Well,
I've got 3. So there's Tom, so he would see.
yeah.
Not regular, you know, it wasn't every day.
Yeah.
But he would say, who's that in the rocking chair? And I'd been just talking on the phone to my friend whose dad had just passed.
Yeah.
And I was saying, your dad's saying one of her children wasn't doing very well, and that she should get one of the other kids to talk to her younger brother. And he was upset about his granddad's passing. And I was just chatting and saying, your dad's saying this, and my son came in then.
Yeah.
I'd had that conversation. He entered the house, sat down and said, who's that in the rocking chair? And I hadn't noticed anybody in the rocking chair. I was talking, but I was talking to George, my friend's dad. And I said, what do they look like? So asking him to stretch him a bit.
Yeah.
And he described him, the clothes he had on. And then he said, oh, it's Mary's dad, George. And he says that Michael's not doing very well and he needs to get Michelle to talk to him, which was exactly with the message he'd given me before my son came here home. So he wasn't in the house at the time, so he couldn't have heard me. So those sorts of things would happen.
Yeah.
But not often. But my middle daughter, she was troubled a lot by spirit. So the house I bought in where I'm living now, when I was viewing the house, I was passed on the stairs by a nurse in spirit. She had a white hat and her cuffs on, and she was quite brusque, like matronly. And I thought, oh, she doesn't want me to have the house. She's worried about me doing things to the house. And then we got upstairs, and I've got like a top floor, which was a bedsit. And there was a male in there, and he was effing and blinding about the road at the back because he could look out over the. And I took a friend there, and I'd been once, and this was the second viewing. And when I got downstairs, I was thinking, how am I going to ask this woman about these 2 spirits that I've seen in the house? It didn't put me off the house.
No.
And she had little burners, back in the day, 25 years ago, incense burners, And I said, oh, rather than oil burners.
Yeah.
So I said, oh, you like aromatherapy? And she said, yeah, I do. I love anything like that, all that spiritual stuff. I said, oh, really? I said, that's interesting. I said, I tend to experience spirit. I said, I've just seen 2 in your house. I said, a lady, just
told her,
and told her. She said, that's my mum, and the other one was my brother. He was killed on the road on New Year's Eve, so that's why he was effing and jeffing about the road.
About the road.
So he used to sit on my daughter's bed because I think she had his room.
Yeah.
And she used to say, she was only like 3. Mummy man.
So it used to frighten her a little bit.
Yeah, it took some doing to get him to go.
I was just going to say that. Did you work with them to get them to go?
It's another case of being polite and doing it the nice way.
Yeah.
And then, no, I had to talk to him like I would to anybody who was outstaying their welcome.
Yeah.
Basically, I'm not going to say what I said, but
Yeah.
you know,
I can imagine.
go to the post office,
Yes. Yeah. I can imagine.
something like that. So you can do it, be nice.
Yeah.
But sometimes I don't know why he wasn't responding.
Yeah. I suppose it can depend a bit what their personalities were like when they were here. Do you
Yeah,
think?
he was a
And
bit
if someone's stubborn in this
stuck.
life.
He just, you know, I don't feel he was stuck. He just, yeah.
Yeah.
So she does, she blocked it really.
Mm.
In blocking it, she nearly broke her neck in Taekwondo because the back of our neck's our willpower. This part of the, and she was like, you know, like a terrier, like a little terrier.
Yeah.
When you try and pull them to come this way, but they want to sniff something, they'll
Yeah.
set their neck, don't they, like that?
Yeah.
So that's what she was doing with Spirit. I'm not doing this. I
Yeah.
don't like it. And she's had a few experiences, and it obviously frightened her and worried her. And then, coincidentally or not, got thrown in practice at Taekwondo, and they thought she'd broken her neck. She hadn't, but it was really bad. And I thought, I know what that is.
Yeah.
And she had like a lump on the back like that, and it was her blocking. And it was a funny scenario because Psychic Sisters opened in Birmingham, in Selfridges, and because I was local, I was sort of like helping run the Birmingham branch, and I needed a receptionist at the time, and my daughter was at uni, and it was my partner at the time. He said, "Why don't you ask your daughter if she wants that job?" So she came to work, and I thought it was very clever of Spirit, really.
Yeah.
Because she did part-time, but she was booking people in, doing reception, but getting to know the crystals, talking to people
Yeah.
about all of that. So she'd say, "Oh, there's a lady in this afternoon, I think she's been divorced." I said, "What did she tell you?" She went, "No, I just have that feeling."
Yeah. So she would.
So she was relaxing into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so she's a little bit more relaxed about it now.
Yeah.
And the youngest one, she doesn't see Spirit like that, but she's got a very strong her past life stuff. It was very strong with her, and it's made her very spiritual. Animals and everybody likes her. Like everybody's like
Yeah.
when they're around her. She's just got a really nice healing energy, and she's very sensitive and has got a lot of knowledge that has been, I suppose, eons of lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when we talk about, obviously I was asking you there if it's been passed down, the gifts. So when we speak about ancestral, you know, sometimes you will hear people say, "Oh, it runs, all the women in my family have this. All the women in my family, it's like we've got bad luck. It's like we've got this." Advising people, so just explaining a little bit about how that works, I suppose. Is it, you know, ancestral stuff, do people carry that through if they feel like that's happening? What type of healing would they look to have? Like I had a lady come to me not long ago, and she was saying, you know, it's like sexual abuse is just carried through our family. It happened to me, it's happened to my daughters, it's happened, you know, and it was very, and obviously sometimes depending where the person's at their journey, you have to be quite careful how you explain to people that this can be carried through ancestrally, because it can upset people. But there is obviously, at the same time, you want to guide people towards some work they can do. And from what I've experienced with you, there's some very powerful stuff you can do to help. So even if we can just touch on just a little bit about some of that work you can do if people are feeling that, just briefly some of the soul retrieval stuff you do. I mean, for me, I've been doing this work a couple of years now, maybe longer, the healing journey, and I've done some very deep work, but your session within 40 minutes was one of the most powerful things I've experienced in 3 or 4 years. Wasn't expecting it. Obviously, we had the joke, I got sued. I mean, because it was obviously Spirit and divine timing knew that was going to happen. And looking back, I'd asked for someone to come in to help me on that path. But I'd just been drawn to you that day. And obviously we were at the middle of a festival, so I'm all dressed up. And I remember coming to you, all my hair done. And next minute, my tits hanging out. My hair's out here.
I have to say though, Kim, I had no idea that was going on. I didn't even notice.
Yeah, no, you did. I noticed. I looked down and went,
the escaped booby.
yeah, the escape booby. That had some healing to do on its own.
Obviously.
Oh, hair's out here, Joe. But all jokes aside, it was, you know, in a short space of time, your intuition, it was so powerful when I come in. Obviously, we spoke about what do you think you need today, and it was the complete opposite of what I thought I needed. And it's continued work as well, but that one session explained so much and took quite a lot of pain away from me and a lot of confusion. So I just, you know, for me, my passion is I know there's people out there sometimes and it's confusing stuff. And sometimes you can't heal stuff you don't know if you don't know it's there. Because sometimes we don't know things are there or have an understanding.
Well, that's the position. I think currently now what I do, when I retired, I call myself a soul healer, and that wasn't a name that I chose myself. And I've written about it in posts recently because I don't want to sound pretentious by saying I'm a soul healer, because I just hold a space for you to heal yourselves and facilitate and see things and just sort of like nudge and guide. But it was a name that Spirit gave me when I asked what am I going to call myself when I eventually retired.
Yeah.
So the shamanic practice and the soul healing takes everything that I do and I call it soul medicine.
Yeah.
So it's a soul medicine reading. So people sometimes want a bit of a reading, they want a bit of this. But the work that we did, because it was at a festival, there were shorter sessions. So normally if you book a session, it would be between 60 and 90 minutes. And I say that because if I said it was an hour and a half, people would, I had my hour and a half if I did it in 60 minutes. So it can happen in an hour, it can happen in an hour and a half or 2 hours, you know. I will go until we're done. And the basis of the work is I work with your soul and ancestral stuff, but soul retrieval and power retrieval are the main things that we work with in shamanic practice, as well as lots of other stuff. But all through life, we lose power. From the minute we're born, we're losing power because children were told to be quiet, not to have our own thoughts, to think and to be indoctrinated into the system, in the education system that it is, you know, in line with patriarchy. So we lose a lot of power in relationships. We give our soul away. We have shocks. We have things happen to us, and we hear people say all the time, "I was never the same after that." Yeah. Now that's a classic example of soul loss. So if somebody says I wasn't the same after that, they've lost soul. So it's a little bit like we take that sharp intake of breath, and in that sharp intake of breath, we've left a little aspect of ourselves there because that's too much for me to deal with. I can't do that on my own. Let's just leave that there and let's move on. La di da 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 da, and we're going to move on, and we're going to try to move on without it. But over time, we need to, you know, reconvene. We need to bring back the soul into wholeness, and that's what a shamanic practitioner will do. So we journey. I sort of integrate the work with the people that I'm working with, so I can journey and practice and bring it and blow it back in and tell you that what's done. But I like to let the people, if I can, get the person I'm working with to visualize, to see, feel, sense as much as they can. Because it's much more powerful because you're in charge of it. You know, you've got your own part to play in it. And there's a big element of forgiveness in all healing. Yeah. And I mean, most of us will have heard of the Ho'oponopono prayer, the Hawaiian prayer. You know, I'm sorry, please forgive me. I love you and thank you. And it's basically that. You know, a lot of work that we do is about forgiveness, and some people aren't ready for that. Yeah. Some people aren't ready for that. That level of forgiveness. But power and soul retrieval, we don't need to forgive the person straight away. Sometimes we need to bring back power, sometimes we need to bring back aspects, and then build up towards feeling strong enough in yourself. Yeah. To be able to find, and it's everybody's journey is different, isn't it? Everybody's journey is different.
And with the ancestral healing, when things like that happen where it seems like all the women are going through, is that a cycle that can be broken? Is it just people are carrying it through?
So I do retreats in Glastonbury a couple of times a year. So there's one coming up in April.
Yeah, I'm hoping to come to that.
And one year was pretty much all about mother wound, witch wound, and sister wound. So we looked at all of that wounding.
Yeah.
And within the shamanic context, and used the land at Glastonbury to help with the healing. I do womb healing as well, so there's a lot of stuff that we store in the womb. Everything really is processed through that space. And again, sometimes womb healing can come into a shamanic practice.
Yeah.
So with trauma.
You work with cacao a lot as well, don't you?
Yeah, I use the cacao as, it started as a cacao ceremony, and it's just blended into 3 ceremonies.
It was completely different this time, weren't it?
And so the last ceremony which you came to, we did a nice ceremony that was, and I always end up on a full moon or something specific.
What
really
I liked
special.
with your group as well is the mixture of male and females.
Yeah.
I like that, and because I think sometimes, especially I found from when I've done cacao ceremonies and stuff, it's a lot of just the women are drawn to it, and it's not just.
Yeah, I've got
just
quite a lot
women.
of guys that come. Somebody made a comment on the Soul Revolution group the other day about womb healing, just me providing a service just for women, and this person was a bit aggrieved. And I thought, well, if you looked at my Instagram page and my offerings on my Linktree, you can see that all of my offerings, apart from the womb healing, are for mixed groups.
Yeah, we do. Me and Sarah, who I do this with, we probably, it's only very rare we do have a goddess retreat, and it will be, but mostly it's mixed. But there's just certain things sometimes, some of the women we're working with, and certain traumas, they're not comfortable with it being a mix. So it's just, but that's only once, it's not all the time. There's other offerings. And it's the same as I know a lot of males sometimes that like to have just their male groups. Because some of the things they want to open up and discuss about, they need their time.
Yeah.
They need their divine masculine time, and the women need. So, but I did like, I like the mixture and a nice balance you have with, I think it's like the drumming circle and the cacao ceremonies. You've got a nice mixture of male and females come in.
So I'm holding a drum circle as well, so that's really lovely to just do once a month. I think we're about 4 months in now.
Yeah.
But the cacao is monthly, so we have cacao, shamanic drumming, shamanic journey, and then I do a sound bath, so it's like 3 ceremonies in one, really.
Yeah, they're really powerful. Just as we're finishing up, so it's funny actually because you've mentioned it about 3 times already, relationships. So that was what Taylor, the pendant, picked for the next guest to discuss and give their words of wisdom on. Do you find when you're on this journey, whether people call it spiritual healing journey, and you're in a role like you're in, do you find romantic relationships more difficult because of your intuition, because of what you do? Does it intimidate men, do you feel, or just any sort of thoughts on relationships as we finish?
I think for myself, I've always had this feeling, and I don't know whether it was like an excuse for not having relationships, that my spiritual, I've got my spiritual work. I've been a single mum a lot. I've had relationships, been married twice, but they never seem to work. Never seem to work. And I've had quite a few relationships, I suppose. And how I've viewed it is that each relationship I have is teaching me something about myself, and we're in this contract. And pretty much everybody that I've met, I had a relationship with, I've had a karmic connection with, past life with, or something. And if that's not the case, it'd be some other part of a lesson.
Yeah.
So I have a feeling, my thoughts about relationships, if you don't sort out the shit that you've had with one relationship, you can end it. That's fine, but process it yourself.
Yeah.
Sort through it, have a good rummage round and sort through and take what you can for the healing for yourself. I always say, if you're pointing a finger at somebody, there's always 3 coming back at you. So
relationships are mirrors, aren't they?
Yeah, personal responsibility, and they're coming to us for a reason.
Yeah.
It's very much like a contract that we're going to be in together, and we can choose not to do that, as well. So I've had some really difficult relationships. The last relationship I had over 5 years ago now, he used to say he was coming to heal me, and I used to laugh. The guy was a narcissist, but it has.
Yeah.
I've done some massive healing since that ended.
It did heal you, but just not in the way you think.
I wasn't aware that I was as codependent as I was. I didn't really understand what codependency was 8 years ago to the degree that I now know and understand. So me healing that and processing through that has helped me help a lot of people.
Yeah.
Since I've gone through that. So heal thyself, and then you know that
Yeah.
you've done it when you start to see clients come with the same issue.
Codependency was a bit of a shocker for me. I didn't realise that I was so bad.
Exactly.
And then the last year, 2 years, I've realised, and I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't realise at all.
Yep.
And like I say, I can now see the lessons and that's what I think relationships are always, it's always sent in at a lesson. I think we can draw people in the level where we're at that time. And I think when you can start seeing it like that, there's a beauty in that and there's a power in that when you have gratitude for the lessons.
Another one, you know, do you want another one of these? Because I had that happen when I finished with the ex. And it was like carbon copy. It was like from the same town. He even actually knew him, it turned out.
Yeah.
It was like, wow. And you can step back and just giggle and go, no thanks.
Yeah.
Or get sucked in if you haven't learnt it and, you know, have a bit more of the lesson.
But I do find when you're in this line of work, because I mean, it takes a lot of energy to be in a relationship, you know, it's energy. And I do find sometimes when you're on this path, it can be difficult because you've got to put so much self-love into yourself and you've got to protect your own energy and then you're giving out I think a lot of people I speak to, a lot of women that do this work, they do find it difficult to have the time to then have a relationship as well.
Well, I just did a really lovely weekend course on boundaries, and I'll be doing my own course on boundaries soon.
Yeah, good. I want to come on that. Boundaries is a big one,
and that's what it is. It's we don't need to give everything of ourselves to everybody. You know, it's boundaries are really important in every part and every aspect of life, and I think we need to be teaching them to children and encouraging children to, you know, when you know that story. I've got grandchildren, so it's a good example. Give great grandma a kiss goodbye. Yeah. No. Yeah. And then some families would make them do it. Yeah. But we don't do that. If the child says no, they don't want to do it.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it is when you look back at that, it's overstepping a boundary, isn't it?
But we would say, "Oh, give grandma a," you know. Yeah. And cajole them to do it, whereas actually, no, it's fine. You know, if they don't want to do it, that's fine. And my mum and dad have always said, no, it's fine if they don't want to do it. You know, we've never. That's just one example. Of where we don't listen.
Sorry, I've just had a funny memory when you were saying that, and it's a story of my dad, and we shouldn't laugh, but he's obviously from Ireland, and when he was younger, you know, obviously the night before, you all had to go in and see the body in the coffin. My dad said, I remember only being a little tiny boy, and it was my granddad at the time, and we'd gone in, and we were scared to death because they didn't want to go in. He says, and my mum and dad are there, and they said, kiss your granddad, goodbye. And my dad said, I froze and was like, and my dad was always the rebel out of all the brothers and sisters. He said, so they're all doing it, going over. And he said, my dad got to the coffin, stopped and went, fuck off, and left it out. He said, and I got such a bollocking for it. He said, but I just, ran. He said, I thought, I'm not doing that. But he said, looking back now, obviously in them days, it was the norm. He said, but that is so traumatizing for a child to, you know, put someone through something like that. But obviously it's the traditions and it's and he laughs now. But yeah, it just reminded me of that.
It's true.
Kiss your granddad goodbyes. And I was thinking, what? Like, it's about 5-6 years of age.
Very odd. Very odd.
But thanks I feel, Sue, you'll have to come back on. I feel like we just got started.
Yeah.
And then we've got to wrap up, and it's really
well, we've done the back history. We just need to.
Well, that's what I've actually seen a lot of people do that on episodes, and I watch a lot of stuff on Gaia, and they'll have the back history, and then we'll come back on and we'll talk about a different theme and stuff like that. I'm going to put you on the spot here, but they've asked me to ask you to get the drum out for a second.
Oh, okay.
And do like a little closing prayer or something for the Soul Space podcast or something that comes through.
Soul Space podcast. So when I drum, I work with a native tribe of guides. So I might chant. So Mikia Kunukuwaya. Mikia Kumua. So blessings upon you. Blessings to the collective, to those that are hearing this. Mikia Kumuwaya. Miakua. Chikimuwaya. And if you breathe in and allow the drum to pull you into that space of the creative field of Mother, Father, God and the universe. So feeling into yourself. Where is your soul? Accessing your heart. Have no fear of expressing your heart and your soul. For it is through and opening your heart that you will find that peace and joy. So play nicely with each other, and when you fall out, accept the other person's point of view. Be not forceful or vengeful. Sit in the power of the love that you have for not only yourself but for other men, for other beings, for the planet, for the earth, for the plants and the animal kingdom. So being surrounded now by the wolves circling round us. Mika Chukumowa.
Thank you, Sue.
That was nice, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Little blessing for
We
everybody.
could do a whole podcast just doing that. I feel
felt-
like I had to
I
come
felt
back
we
a little
were-
bit
We
there.
were talking to people about, like, when we have disagreements, and like, oh, she's talking a load of shit and fucking no. Yeah. Acknowledge that you don't fully agree with what that person's saying, but everybody has the right to their opinion, and don't take it into your own heart. Don't let that heart of yours that's open and loving to get angry over these things. Whatever anybody else is saying and doing, that's their business. It doesn't have to be your business.
Yeah.
And I was listening to a podcast on the way here, and the guy was talking about being present, being witnessing everything that's around us. So we take a snapshot of life, and we might take this snapshot and say, I want to take that picture there, but there's a bloody tree or a thing in the way. Oh, and you're moaning about it. So this is life, isn't it? That person's annoyed me. They're in my way. But as you're taking the photograph of this snapshot, perhaps if you just move 5 foot to the other side, the tree won't be blocking the view.
Yeah.
And you can take a perfect picture. And when you print that picture and put it on Facebook or whatever you're going to do with it, nobody will know that that tree's been in the way or irritated you to start with, because
Yeah.
you stepped to the side
Yeah.
and you allowed it to be moved out of your view.
Yeah.
So that is the same analogy for life, and for this little bit of drum healing that we just had was about that. Allow yourself to allow others to be as they are, and don't be too affected by them.
Yeah.
Step to the side.
Yeah.
It's something that's been coming up for a few days. They kept showing me Matador, you know, how they move their cloaks so the bull can run past.
Yeah.
Or people in martial arts, they don't have to stand there and fight somebody full on. They can just move, don't they?
Yeah.
And the person runs past them, and you're still intact, stood
Yeah.
on your feet.
Yeah.
So there's that little bit of advice from Spirit, I think.
Okay. Yeah. Thanks, Sue.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course.